Steve Keeva is a real inspirational part of this movement to emphasize the values that we all hope we have and sometimes get peeled away from you. But I think what's happening now, like in law schools with mediation and other things, is a re-emphasis on values that are important. Understanding, listening, trust, and different, for some folks, spirituality, love, the things that move us to help make things a little bit better. And Steve, his writing and his organization was real important to that, and a wonderful guy, just a very nice person. And if one of the things that happens is we emphasize our intellect and our ability to cut to the chase and to make certain things look good and making other things look bad, Steve was pointing out articulately in writing that wasn't the way you had to practice. You could practice in a way that if you read about yourselves in the headlines tomorrow, your kids would feel good about you. You'd feel good about the way you acted. So I think he gave an articulate voice, and he gave it within the American Bar Association, which gives it a certain credibility. So a real important part of this discussion of who are we and who do we want to be and how do we get there as lawyers. So a very special person.
Steve Keeva has been an inspiration to me as much as anyone over the last few years in terms of thinking about how lawyers can do things differently. I've gotten to know Steve well on a personal level, but I was familiar with his work before I met him, and his book Transforming Practices, the columns he's written for the ABA Journal, highlighting so many lawyers who are doing things differently, that lawyers that are able to really make a difference for their clients, make a difference in the world, but also enjoy what they do. The very title of his book, Transforming Practices, Finding Joy and Satisfaction in the Legal Life, itself inspires me, and I've recommended that book to students and to lawyers. So many people look at it a little funny and say, finding joy in the legal life? But the great thing about Steve's work is he's not just giving his opinion about what can happen. He is a great reporter, which of course is what his background and training is. And he's identified people and then given voice to them, so that we hear from all of these lawyers who have figured out, each in their own individual way, how to really be transformative in the lives of their clients and their communities, and transformative of their own life and work. And through that, ultimately to find joy. And so Steve's been a great example. His work has really served as a model here at our law school, because all of our students as first years go out and interview lawyers and talk to them about the kinds of issues that Steve has talked to people about how they find meaning and satisfaction and purpose in their work. And so all of our students here at Mercer have that mindset of let's talk to lawyers and find people that do it right, and have figured out a way to really be satisfied in their work, but more than satisfied, really find joy in service to others.
Steve Keeva wrote a book called Transforming Practices, and I attended a small presentation that he did at the International Alliance of Holistic Lawyers in Chicago in 2000. I think it was 2000. And I really enjoyed his book because it helped to let individuals, the consuming individuals, mostly lawyers, realize that this was a legitimate, well thought out way of practicing law, and that you no longer had to be bound by this sort of idea that lawyers have to be constantly adversarial or constantly aggressive or constantly difficult to work with or constantly fighting, that there is another way. And I think he allowed lawyers to consider that this other way is acceptable. And it's, if you're going to change how you practice law, it's easier if you're changing into a way that is accepted in your profession. It's just a much easier transition. And I think that he helped other lawyers recognize that this is an easier transition because it's accepted. It's okay. It's a good idea. It's a helpful idea. And I think that was an important contribution that he made.
Very early on, I had a friend whose name was actually Deborah Aaron, And she was the one who wrote the book, Running from the Law and What You Can Do with a Law Degree. Deborah was a dear friend, and she had been invited to read a transcript of a book that was coming out, Transforming Practices, Steve Keeva. And she shared that with me, and she said to me, Stella, this is a book I know you're going to enjoy. And as I read through Steve Keeva's book, I was so impressed and inspired and encouraged, because he had collected so many stories. And there's a wonderful quote from the Scottish poet Bobby Burns, and he says, "Oh, what a gift he give us to see ourselves as others see us." I think it was so important that Steve, not being a lawyer, could step outside of the profession, because he had not been in the profession as totally as some of us, and with eyes that only someone outside looking in could name and read and interpret and question. He was, for me, a real mentor.